garde avec mes mots sur cela.
I just want to be clear, though. Yes or no, did you bring up the murder?
I refer to my previous answer.
Hi, Mr. Carney. JP Tasker from CBC News. How are you?
I'm great.
Okay, good.
Thank you, JP. How are you, JP?
I'm just fine.
That's good.
Couldn't be better, really.
Yeah.
President Trump says...
that was your question.
No, not so fast. President Trump says tariffs are simple, and what you're proposing to resolve the trade dispute is complex. What's he talking about? What have you pitched that's complex?
Complexity is in the eye of the beholder sometimes. Look, we have mutual interests in security, border security, and military security, and in commercial prosperity, and we have a variety of paths of those discussions. The Government of Canada is going to agree only to those things that are fundamentally in the interest of Canada. In many cases, there's alignment with the United States, but not all. And the discussions are continuing. They're productive discussions, but they have more to go. And as I say, they'll take all the time that's necessary, but no more. Thank you.
Good evening, Prime Minister Carney. Justin Ling, freelance. I'm wondering if you can comment about whether or not President Trump and the American delegation pushed to water down language around the Ukrainian joint declaration, the joint declaration on Ukraine. And on top of that, I wonder what you make of his comments suggesting that it was personally offensive to Vladimir Putin to kick him out of the G7 after the invasion of Crimea.
The answer to the first, and I will speak, as you may appreciate, Justin, at these events, I speak with President Trump and his equivalents, not the delegations. The language that's in my declaration, directly with President Trump, no adjustments from my fellow leaders. So the consensus around that language. With respect to, was it personally? It was personally offensive, as to put it mildly, to the citizens of Ukraine and the inhabitants of Crimea when Russia invaded in 2014, which was the cause of their ejection from the G8.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Christopher Nardi from the National Post. Canada sent mixed messages in the past on our willingness to supply energy to allies, particularly LNG, to our allies in Europe and Asia. So what are you telling our G partners now about what Canada can do to secure supply? And is it very different from your predecessor's message?
I'll just look forward. As you know, or I believe you would, most Canadians do, we view that Canada has a unique opportunity to become an energy superpower. That's in all forms of energy. Would very much, to go to your specific question, would very much include LNG. We're seeing the opening very shortly. We just had opening of one of the major LNG projects, partially Indigenous owned. As you know, LNG Canada is about to be functioning, the largest LNG investment that we've seen. There is more that's possible, and there have been a number of discussions, including here, about potential LNG partnerships. So we look forward to those. As well, there have been a number of discussions, and I'll refer back to one of the decisions at this summit around Canada's immense potential to be a supplier of critical metals and minerals, rare earths. There was, this is my point, to bring up my prop, which can you see this? You can't, but this is the magnet that President von der Leyen circulated, which is formed in Estonia by a Canadian company, and it is the only such magnet made outside of China right now. And of course, building that out with rare earth materials in Canada, this is one of many examples that we can supply. So being an energy superpower is conventional, it's critical minerals, it's clean energy, it's nuclear, it's hydro, it's all those aspects. And I would say a tremendous interest in that. And my government, alongside provincial governments, but of course at the core, the private sector is looking forward to developing those in the interests of shared prosperity.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Joanna Smith with The Logic. Yesterday, President Trump, after leaving the summit, told reporters that you had discussed Canada's participation in the Golden Dome defense system.
Yep.
He raised the price tag to $71 billion or zero if Canada were to.
Is that in Canadian or?
50 per state, US dollars, I believe.
Well,
and
no, he was in
so
Canada,
that he's
so-
not the only one sharing that. He said it would be a separate deal from any tariffs deal. What can you share about that discussion and where your thinking is now on that project?
Well, look, a couple of things. One is that, and part of the spirit, unfortunately, of these discussions is that the world is a much more dangerous place, and the threats that face Canada, face other countries, have shifted quite dramatically. We can see exactly, unfortunately, in very tragic respects, what's happening in the Middle East as we speak, in terms of threats from ballistic missiles, the necessary to have ballistic missile defense. Canada, our geography is less and less of a shield, of a natural shield in those respects, Russia is an aggressor. Other hostile states are in prospect, terrorist organizations as well. We need to protect ourselves. That's part of the reason why, well, those are the reasons why we've started with the over-the-horizon radar scheme with the Arctic, which is one component of a broader protection that needs to be put in place. There are many reasons why partnering in this case, not all cases, but in this case, partnering with the Americans would make ready, as you know, in NORAD, and this is a potential extension of that. But these are live, ongoing discussions, we'll continue to pursue them as long as they make sense for Canada.
Journal de Montréal. Oui. Est-ce que M. Trump est revenu encore une fois sur son fantasme de 51 mm dans vos conversations privées avec lui? Et si oui, qu'est-ce que ça dit sur l'état des négociations et sur le respect? Vous avez beaucoup parlé de respect la dernière semaine et du respect qu'il voue au Canada et à vous-même.
Non, et il y en a beaucoup de respect pour le Canada.
Donc il l'a pas mentionné du tout.
Non. Okay.
Hi, Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg. I wanted to ask about this 30-day window now that you set up with President Trump. Can you explain, was this your idea for a 30-day window, or are you trying to put a deadline in place? And is retaliation still, do you move to retaliation if this 30 days expires without a deal? What's the rationale here, and what happens if you don't get to a deal?
Well, look, there are many aspects of the relationship with the United States, and many of your good questions have touched on them, from security, border security, commercial, financial, otherwise. And we don't want to, with respect to the specifics around specific tariffs, it's necessary. There's certain decisions that can be taken given that information, given the relative perspectives, and quite often in negotiations, having a form of deadline is helpful to concentrate the mind, and that can be the case here. The teams are working well. There's exchange of information, exchange of ideas, and having that focus will be helpful. What was the second part of your question?
Retaliation. You have not retaliated for doubling of steel and aluminum.
No, we have not yet. We retain the flexibility in order to do so, and we are looking, but I will say one thing which is related to that, which is we are looking very actively about the risks from third party or third country flows of steel, and mainly steel, but possibly aluminum, into Canada. And the need to provide protections from that. So we're looking at the modalities and ways of doing that, and we're very alive to that. That's the first. We're also, of course, looking to provide liquidity and other support to the firm. So, look, we have consistently responded in the best interest of the Canadian industry and Canadian workers when there have been these illegal and unjustified tariffs put in place. We do so in a way tailored to each situation. We have multiple tools with which we can respond, and some of those, as this evolves, relate as much to other countries potential dumping of steel, excess steel into Canada as it does the U.S. So we're looking to calibrate appropriately, but we'll do what's necessary, and in short term. And I wouldn't necessarily look to a 30-day window to in that response.
Hi there, Mark Reynolds with the Globe Mail. On the 30 days, are we expecting to see a full deal announced in 30 days, a blueprint of a deal? And has Donald Trump ever given you any indication that he is willing to remove all tariffs on Canadian goods, as the Canadian delegation and yourself have requested?
Well, it's a negotiation, so that's our position. At present, the United States may have a slightly different position, but we'll pursue one that is in the best interests of certainly Canada and aligned with U.S. interests. Thanks.
A blueprint versus a full deal?
On verra. We'll see. Look, it's we have a full deal. It's called USMCA. Kuzma here.
Last question.
Yeah.
Good evening, Prime Minister. My name is Gaurav Sawant. I work for India Today in Delhi. Your meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, how would you describe that? And what are concrete steps that you and the Prime Minister of India discussed to take this relationship forward, that it reaches its true potential, sir?
Well, I think the several things, if I may say. I would say the meeting, the fact of the meeting. Let me say a few things. First, just in terms of Prime Minister Modi's attendance at the G7. Prime Minister Modi has attended every G7 since 2018. That is a reflection of the size of the Indian economy, the dynamism of the Indian economy, Indian technology, the leadership position India plays in a host of venues from G20 and beyond. So as chair of the G7, hosting the Prime Minister in that context is entirely natural, entirely consistent. I fully expect the Prime Minister of India will be in attendance at the G7 next year, for example, in France. First thing. Secondly, in terms of the bilateral relationship, which is your question, I think the meeting today was important, but I would describe it as foundational, as a necessary first step, an exchange of views, frank, open exchange of views around law enforcement, transnational repression as two examples, an agreement to provide the necessary foundations to begin to rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect, sovereignty, trust. And that begins with what was agreed, you asked for concrete, which is that we will move to appoint high commissioners again. And let me just finish by putting that in context, which is there are very deep ties of people and businesses between Canada and India. It's well known. It's part of your point about where the relationship could go. And they are not served at present by consular services, in effect, certainly by high commissioners, and it's necessary